The last time anyone saw Ray "Bull" Donovan was the third week of September in 1992. He'd pulled his rig, a behemoth Peterbilt with a customized chrome grille, into the Crossroads Diner just outside of Havenwood, Maine. He ordered coffee, black as asphalt, and a slice of pie. When he went to pay, the owner, Brenda, noticed his eyes looked heavy, ringed with dark worry. "Everything all right, Ray?" she'd asked. Ray just shrugged, his massive shoulders rolling under his denim jacket. "Just a long haul, Brenda. Headed for Quebec with a load of timber. Should be back Sunday." He never came back Sunday. The logging company reported the truck missing on Monday. The highway patrol found no skid marks, no witnesses, and no sign of the rig or its driver on the winding, pine-flanked Route 12 that cut through the state forests. It was as if Ray Donovan and 20 tons of truck had simply been lifted into the atmosphere. The police had a few theories. He ran off, he was ambushed for his cargo, or he simply fell asleep at the wheel and veered into the dense wilderness. Without a trace, the case went cold, settling into the vast, dusty archive of local legends, the ghost of Route 12. 20 years later, in the crisp autumn of 2012, the quiet of the Havenwood area was broken by the sound of heavy machinery. The state was upgrading the bridge over the Black River, a deep, murky stretch of water locals rarely ventured near. Before construction could begin, a specialized sonar search and recovery team was brought in to check the riverbed for old pilings or debris. The team was led by Maya Hansen, a meticulous woman who treated the river bottom like an archaeological dig. On the fourth day, her sonar operator flagged a massive anomaly. "I've got something big, Maya," the operator's voice crackled over the headset. "Too geometrical to be a rock. Looks boxed." Maya steered the boat over the spot. They dropped a remotely operated vehicle, ROV, with a camera. The murky water gave way to a shocking sight. Resting upright on the silty bottom, preserved by the cold, deep water, was the faint, hulking outline of a Peterbilt truck. Its once gleaming chrome was coated in decades of river grime, but the massive sleeper cab and distinctive shape were undeniable. The dive team went in immediately. They attached heavy lines to the chassis, and the slow, agonizing pull began. When the truck finally broke the surface, groaning as the water poured from its windows and crevices, the true horror was revealed. The passenger side door was gone, sheared away by the impact. The driver's side door was jammed shut. Using cutting tools, the rescue crew forced the door open. Inside, still buckled into the driver's seat, was Ray Donovan. He was a skeleton now, clad in the remnants of the denim shirt, his skull tilted forward over the steering wheel. A hush fell over the crowd. The ghost of Route 12 was real, and he'd been there all along. But the discovery only deepened the mystery. The accident reconstruction experts determined the truck had not just veered into the water, it had been driven straight down the ravine at a high speed. There were no brake marks on the road above, meaning Ray was conscious and accelerated directly into the river. Why? Then, one of the recovery divers, performing a final sweep of the cab, pulled a small object from Ray's petrified jacket. It was a key, not for the truck, but a residential door key attached to a faded plastic keychain that read, "Black River Lodge, Cabin 3. The Black River Lodge was an abandoned collection of cabins a mile upriver, notorious for being a haunt for illicit backwoods deals. Why would Ray Donovan, just a tired driver, have a key to a remote cabin on the night he vanished? The skeleton of Ray Donovan had been found, but the truth of his final hours had just begun to surface. The police, now treating the 2-decade-old disappearance as a full-blown homicide investigation, focused immediately on the Black River Lodge. The lodge had burned down in a suspicious fire in the late 90s, leaving behind only the stone foundations and the creepy, waterlogged shells of the individual cabins. A forensics team, led by Sarah Chen, found cabin 3 exactly where the key suggested. It was a ruin, caved-in roof, soot-stained walls, but the stone hearth and floor remained intact. The investigators spent 2 days sifting through debris, mold, and ash. In a hidden compartment under the old floorboards, the team discovered a thick, oil-stained ledger. It was meticulously kept, and when Sarah finally pieced together the brittle, burned pages, a picture of Ray Donovan's final night began to emerge. The ledger wasn't a log of guests. It was a record of illicit trades. It tracked the movement of valuable, untaxed goods, mostly specialty lumber and high-grade maple syrup, that were being smuggled across the Canadian border using the winding, unsupervised Route 12. Ray Donovan, the tired trucker, wasn't just hauling timber. He was a mule for a low-level smuggling operation. The ledger's final entry, dated the day Ray vanished, was terse. September 22, 1992. Peterbilt 481. Full load. Deposit paid. Receiver, the broker. The team searched the perimeter again. Outside, near the overgrown back porch of cabin 3, the ground was still soft despite the years. They used ground-penetrating radar and uncovered a metal box. Inside were a handful of sealed heavy-duty envelopes containing thick stacks of old pre-1996 $100 bills and a single, faded photograph. The photo showed Ray Donovan sitting at a kitchen table, laughing. Beside him sat a thin, stern-looking man with cold eyes in a crisp suit. Scrawled on the back was a single name: Elias. The missing door. With a motive and a potential partner, Elias, or the broker, identified, Detective Chen returned to the wreckage of the truck. The missing passenger door was still a critical anomaly. It hadn't rusted away. It was gone. Chen had the truck pulled to a dry dock and examined by an engineer. The damage wasn't consistent with a collision with the water or riverbank. The bolts were ripped out, and the surrounding metal was bent outward, as if the door had been violently taken off before the truck went into the river. The engineer noticed something else. Embedded deep in the dashboard, near where the door would have hinged, was a small, bright fleck of paint, a color that didn't match the Peterbilt's deep blue or the river grime. It was a distinctive, creamy off-white, the kind used on older vans or work trucks. Chen went back to the police archives. She didn't search for a man named Elias. She searched for missing persons 1992 off-white van. She found it. A case filed 3 days after Ray Donovan vanished. A traveling sales associate named Elias Vance, who had gone missing from the same general area. His company-issued white van was found abandoned near Route 12, its passenger door jammed and the ignition missing. The chilling implication clicked into place. 1. Ray Donovan was set to meet his contact, Elias Vance, the broker, at cabin 3. 2. For whatever reason, a debt, a double cross, a violent struggle ensued, likely inside the cabin or perhaps by the truck. The struggle culminated at the Peterbilt, where the passenger door was either ripped off or damaged by Elias trying to get in or Ray trying to get out. Elias somehow ended up in the driver's seat of Ray's rig. Ray's skeleton was found in the driver's seat, not the passenger seat. This meant either Ray had put his seatbelt on after the struggle, or Elias Vance had been driving when the truck went into the water. If Elias was driving, who was in the passenger seat? And if Elias was driving, then Ray, the true owner of the key, must have been. Subtly, the discovery of the truck 20 years later didn't solve a disappearance. It simply presented the police with 2 bodies, one that everyone knew about, and one that was still missing.
Detective Chen ordered a forensic deep dive into the Black River ledger. The paper trail eventually led to a defunct shell corporation in Montreal that had been buying huge quantities of lumber for 20 years, lumber that never seemed to arrive at a legitimate construction site. The operation was massive, and Ray Donovan was just one tiny cog. The police determined the target was the deposit money Ray had hidden in the metal box, the payoff for that run plus his share of future profits. Elias Vance, the broker, wasn't just collecting goods, he was managing the flow of cash, and he decided to cut Ray out. The scene was reconstructed. Ray had arrived at Cabin 3 first. He'd followed the routine: hide the cash, grab the key, and wait for the broker. When Elias Vance arrived, he didn't come alone. The police used new technology to analyze the ancient rusted doorknob of Cabin 3. They found a smudge of metal that was not rust, not wood, and not the doorknob's own material: aluminum residue. It was the trace of a struggle, aluminum rubbing off a light, sturdy object. They realized the missing passenger door from the Peterbilt wasn't the start of the fight, it was the trophy. The scene inside the ruined cabin was cold, but the evidence spoke of hot violence. Elias and an accomplice had cornered Ray, demanding the deposit money and the ledger. Ray, Bull Donovan, didn't back down. The fight was vicious. Ray used his strength. His attackers used a heavy aluminum-framed object, possibly a piece of the van's equipment or a specialized briefcase, to subdue him, leaving the trace on the doorknob. They got the ledger, but Ray refused to tell them where the cash was. That's when they dragged the beaten, barely conscious Ray outside to his truck. Elias Vance took the driver's seat. He wanted to scare the location of the cash out of Ray before dumping him. Ray was in the passenger seat. This is where the true horror of the truck's discovery was hidden. The accomplice, standing outside, had used a heavy tool to rip the passenger door clean off its hinges, locking Ray into a terrifying open-air cage. The intent wasn't to take the door. It was to ensure Ray had no way to escape when the truck hit the water, transforming his own vehicle into his tomb. Elias, with Ray trapped and likely screaming beside him, drove the Peterbilt rig straight toward the Black River Gorge. But Ray had one final desperate move. As the truck picked up speed down the steep embankment, he used the last of his energy to lunge across the cab. He didn't reach the wheel, but his foot slammed down on the accelerator and the gas tank cap at the same time. The lurch threw Elias off balance just as they hit the embankment's curve. The Peterbilt didn't go straight, it spun, and the force of the spin sent the unprotected passenger side, Ray's side, smashing directly against a massive granite boulder hidden by the thick brush on the riverbank. Ray's skull was crushed against the granite instantly, killing him before the truck even hit the water. The impact of the boulder, however, also jolted the truck, pinning Elias Vance, the man who would have lived, hard against the driver's side door, which had been weakened by the initial struggle. When the Peterbilt finally plunged into the deep, cold Black River, the pressure of the water rushing in found the weakened seals. The river, the same river that had preserved Ray's skeleton for 20 years, swallowed the cab whole. Elias Vance, likely concussed and pinned, did not survive the drowning. But the driver's side door, having been pushed by the impact, remained relatively intact. The body of Ray Donovan was found 20 years later, still buckled in, preserved on the driver's side, having been thrown there by the initial impact. The missing passenger? Elias Vance. His body, less securely held, had been swept out of the damaged passenger side of the cab by the churning, freezing currents of the Black River in the hours after the crash. His company van was found 3 days later on Route 12, abandoned by the accomplice who took the keys and the truck's manifest and fled. The case was closed, not by finding a killer, but by identifying the second victim and the accomplice, who would now be a man in his mid to late 50s. But the Black River still flows, and somewhere downstream, tucked under a root system or buried deep in the mud, lies the final piece of the puzzle, the skeleton of Elias Vance, the broker.